Mr.
Bond.
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 Bond. James Bond.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Ultimate Bondcast. You are here with Mike and Chris. Say hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris. How are you all? Are you all right, Mike?
Hope Chris is watching. So, no, we are back for another session. We went with you about 3 weeks ago, and we launched the show. We launched the channel for the first time. To be honest, I think fair to say we've been kind of overwhelmed with responses from people in such a short amount of time. Really, we're Facebook and YouTube. So thank you all for watching and keeping in touch with us and putting comments on the page. It's been great. So we are back for the next installment. Are you excited, Chris?
Oh, I'm really excited, and I totally want to echo what you said as well. I think the response has been really good, and do you know what? We're just a couple of fans who just want to chat Bond, and there's no, we don't consider ourselves to be the most up to date on Bond, but we're passionate and we want to have a chat, and we love that you're getting involved as well. Sorry, Mike. I was just going to say we've had a couple of comments in the live chat so far. So from Lorenzo, who's there watching, thank you for those comments. It's really good to see that you're watching. Good to have you here. So
we also had a question from our last stream, Chris. So before we jump in, I'll ask you the question, and you can answer it, or we can answer it together. It depends how you want to do it, really. We've got a question from a guy called Taz on our last stream. So hi, Taz, if you're watching tonight. He's asked, basically, I'm not a big Bond fan, but I do like other movies like Die Hard,
Get out of
Jason
here,
Bourne,
Taz.
John Wick. I've never been much of a Bond fan relating to that, but convinced me to watch otherwise. What would we do in that scenario, Chris?
Wow.
I don't know if it's worth him going
from
more...
my point of view. I think sorry. Okay. Well, I was going to say
we broke up. Sorry.
I think... Right. I'll say it. I'll say right here. My signal is terrible, so apologies to anybody who's watching. If I drop out, I apologise. Mike will more than happily pick it up in my absence.
That's fine.
I would say that if you're a fan of Jason Bourne, then I would think that the newer Bond films, the Daniel Craig Bond films, would be a good place to start, because it feels like that version of Bond was very much born out of, no pun intended, this change in the spy, the espionage film, and how Jason Bourne was a very different type of spy to what we were used to with the more aristocratic, tuxedo wearing, suave Bond character. Jason Bourne was more rugged and more brutal, I think. So
he was very much rough around the edges in every way, wasn't he?
He really was. I mean, what would you say?
I don't know. I think you got the right trail of thought there. There's two aspects to it. I would say one, you got to think about he's got the option to explore any era he wants without any prejudice at all. So you can kind of find your flavour, whichever actor suits you better. And there's a lot to go on. But I think if you're going to go on the modern times, you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Chris. Really bang on. Something like, for example, Quantum of Solace, not the most popular movie in the franchise, but all the the camera cuts, the way the fights were quite fast paced and jagged.
Shaky cam.
It was Bourne inspired. Let's be honest. Some of it was Bourne inspired. So
I
think Taz, go for that. Go for a bit of Quantum of Solace, much a bit of Daniel Craig. See you get on, and what's another comment? Let us know how you got on. Did we convert you, or did we fail horrendously? It could go either way. Right. Anyway, the point of the show today, guys. We are in review mode. We've never done a review before, Chris, have we? Apart from talk about our favourite films, but we're going to go deep diving into the very first one. We have. I mean, I'm actually really excited because we've actually done our homework here, haven't we, Chris?
Oh well, yeah, absolutely. We're committed to our fans to bring the best quality product.
I'm that committed. I sat on the sofa this morning with a bacon sandwich and I watched Doctor No. Probably from where we are now, it's probably 7 hours ago I finished watching that movie. So it's probably my billionth time watching it. But it was good to watch it with a real open eyes approach, look at things that maybe we casually glanced over that time round. So, and for those of you who aren't aware, Doctor No was the very first 007 movie back in 1962. So it's sort of infant movie, it's finding its feet, but what it also had was elements that it brought over little loose threads from the novels. So whilst they hadn't happened in the movies, because obviously it's the first one, the character was still very much what he should be. Is that fair to say?
So I'll preface this by saying that I don't know if anyone else who's watching feels the same, but I would say Doctor No is possibly the Bond film that I've watched the least out of all of the Bond films, purely because of how old it was and maybe how rough around the edges it was, but also I think that I only really watched it when I was doing like a marathon, and I'd go, I need to start at number 1, but really I'm just watching number 1 to get to 2, 3, and 4. But so with that out of the way, I mean, I think what you're saying is absolutely spot on, and I do think that there's a lot more of Bond there, and what I mean by Bond is like the Bond formula. There's a lot more there than I remembered being there.
Yeah,
so,
I agree with
there's
that.
There's a lot they get wrong in the first film that doesn't really change. And I know some of it you say is from the book, but the drink, the Bond, James Bond, all of these different, the music, the quippy one-liners, it's all the formula is set out in the first film, and I was surprised that I'd forgotten how much of it was in that first film.
Do you know what I also had forgotten, Chris, having watched Doctor No again? I probably haven't seen it for probably, I don't know, 3 years maybe, being realistic, because like you said, it's not my go-to. I would normally go to GoldenEye, Skyfall, Goldfinger, Spy Who Loved Me, something like that, whereas what really surprised me, this movie actually had 4, and now we discussed it earlier, maybe 5 Bond girls that people probably haven't picked up on. So first one you could pick up on, because you've got to do it in order, is Sylvia Trench. Obviously, I don't know the actress's real name.
A recurring Bond girl as well.
Yeah, a very rarely occurring Bond girl. But she was, I suppose, the one that got him to word the line Bond, James Bond in a casino for the first ever time. So the first one, as far as I'm aware, in the movies is, it's Sylvia. So it'd be interesting to see if I've got that right or wrong, but I think she's the first one that came up. Number 2.
Yeah, I mean she's right at the top, isn't she?
Yeah. Number 2, I would say, could be Lois Maxwell as Moneypenny for the very first time, because she's obviously in essence she is a reoccurring Bond girl, isn't she?
She is. And do you mind if I just say, like, even that element, you see it in every Bond film after Doctor No, is Bond coming in, throwing his hat on the hat stand, and the unabashed sort of sexual chemistry and flirtation between the two of them is there, right at the beginning of Doctor No.
Legendary.
It really is.
Yeah, I think that's where, when I was watching it this morning, I was like, so I've never actually thought of Moneypenny as a Bond girl, but if you think about it, she's the Bond girl.
She's the Bond girl, right?
She's in practically every movie. There's probably a handful, probably 1 or 2 where she's not, in some actress's shape or form, but the character is always there. So, you've got Sylvia Trench, you've got Moneypenny. The next one, minor role, is I don't know her name because she's not credited, but it's the girl with the camera. When he comes through the airport.
Yes.
Yeah, and she puts the hat up to try and deflect the picture being taken.
Yes. And then he catches her in the nightclub, doesn't he?
That's right. Yeah. And again, I never thought of her as a Bond girl, but I think because the movie's so infant, it didn't have a formula for Bond girls. It just put lots of women into it. Do you know what I mean? From there,
they knew what they were doing.
Yeah. Fourth one is your famous one. Of course, it's Ursula Andress, isn't it? It's Honey Rider. You know, I mean,
it is.
Let's face it, people that have paid tribute to her in the past, right? If you think about the other movies that followed out because of her bikini scene that was infant, absolutely legendary. We had Halle Berry in Die Another Day doing the bikini out of the water and all that.
She was.
And Daniel Craig himself in Casino Royale, he went the other way around where he was showing off the bod.
He did.
You know, so I found that quite intriguing. But you seem to know something I didn't about. There's a fifth Bond girl.
I didn't realise that it wasn't well known. But I don't pretend to know a lot about the back. You know, the weird stuff with Bond. But Ursula Andress's accent they felt was too foreign for the audiences, that it was too difficult to understand. So actually she was dubbed by another actress called Nikki van der Zyl, and it's worth people, if they don't know, it's worth knowing about Nikki van der Zyl because she is actually a Bond girl in a number of different movies. If you think you know the voice of your Bond girl, you might be surprised to learn that it's actually Nikki van der Zyl. So,
really?
I mean, for example, Jill Masterson in Goldfinger.
In the hotel room at the beginning.
That's Nikki van der Zyl.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Domino. That's Nikki van der Zyl.
Thunderball. My God. Right. Yeah.
Kissy Suzuki in You Only Live Twice. That's Nikki van der Zyl.
Do you know? I've got to be honest. I thought her accent, no disrespect, was too perfect. Yeah. So actually, that makes perfect sense now you've said that. Absolutely does.
There are others like some like when they have to go back and do some dubbing of lines that they didn't think worked very well, and the actress isn't available. They just got Nikki van der Zyl in to do the lines. So like Solitaire in Live and Let Die, some of her lines are read by Nikki van der Zyl. So it's mad, and she's actually in a lot of the films as well, in the early films, in the background doing other things and
do
being
you reckon
lesser
she gets
character.
royalties for those movies now?
You'd hope so, wouldn't you? She must do. Isn't it something where like if you have a speaking line in a movie, you have to get paid a certain cost? Like if it's a speaking role, so I would hope that she gets something for it.
Yeah, I mean we can say that for maybe 5 Bond girls, but that also means 3 or 4 subsequent movies have also got an extra Bond girl because of Nikki.
Yep, so absolutely.
There you go, Bond fans. You've heard it here. We didn't know. I didn't know that, and maybe you didn't. But Chris has informed us, and we're massively influenced on that front, mate. So well done.
I only knew it because Google told me.
Well, you were good enough to do your homework.
Absolutely.
Do you know what? Also, right on the subject of numbers, right? This is really interesting. So we'll keep the idea of money at the moment because I looked into really sadly the budgets of Doctor No. Now, Doctor No was actually made on a budget of just $1 million. Now, which doesn't sound like a lot because nowadays, what are we talking? 80, 90, 100 plus million budgets, pretty much.
Oh, Bond films are definitely.
But when you put it into context of the way the money changes and the inflation and all that sort of stuff, so $1 million, I calculated this really sadly, is £10.25 million or dollars now. So
that's still good
for a startup movie. That was treated pretty well in terms of the movie industry because no one knew how it would have performed, would they?
No, absolutely not. And it made a lot of money.
It did. It grossed it. It absolutely annihilated. Hence, From Russia with Love got doubled to 2 million.
It made 60 million. It made 60 times its budget, which is kind of mental, really, isn't it?
So that's interesting. It made 60 million, right? How much was Sean Connery paid? Any idea? Because I know.
Oh, do you? Okay. Was it less than 100,000?
You've got to put it. Are you talking then or now? That's interesting.
Well,
60s or now? Yeah, back then. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say probably about £40,000 he was paid.
Back then, no. So back then, in dollars, Sean Connery was paid $16,000.
$16,000.
Which, when you put it into money terms now, I think it's about $140,000.
That's poor.
It
Someone
is.
sack his agent.
It is, but his later movies, he was like being paid $3 million a time, so he got it back. The terms were renegotiated.
That Sean Connery did all right for himself, didn't he? In the end, he was in 3 or 4 movies after this one. He did okay.
It made him. So yeah, I was just quite intrigued by that. Because I thought, hang on a minute, that's not a lot of money, but we've got to put it into context. When it's been running for 60 years of the franchise, money is going to play a different factor as the time goes on. And all that. So yeah, he was basically paid 150 grand roughly for doing Dr. No, which in fairness, he was an unknown actor. He hadn't done a lot of press before that. When I looked into it,
he was in like a Disney film, wasn't he, before?
Yeah, it's virtually nothing. Let's be honest, really, from there, So, but yeah, big question for you then, Chris. So it's the first movie, but Bond's a veteran. He's obviously a refined character at this point.
Yes.
How's Connery to you? This movie only. Let's go through Connery.
I think Connery is excellent in this movie. I think that if Connery doesn't sell Bond in this film doesn't succeed. And he is menacing and suave and dangerous in this film. That photo you've got up right now, for me, is the single best scene in the movie. Just when he's like, when he gets, is it Professor Dent that comes in and he and he shoots his shots.
He shoots the pillow.
Shoots the pillow at the lady on the screen right now.
Yes.
With the dangerously ethnic makeup that she's got on, and he says he gets his gun back, doesn't he? And Bond says, "That's a Smith & Wesson, and you've had your 6." And then he shoots him in cold blood, and it's that second shot where Dent's on the ground, already dead, already down, and he shoots him, and he still flinches. It's such a cold scene, and I love it.
Do you know what it harks me back to, actually, if I think about it now? Maybe it was inspired by, I don't know, but I think back to the Casino Royale opening, where he's in the office and he's just sitting in the chair.
Where he's doing his 2 00 kills.
Yeah. I think it's I think they got the idea, because that wasn't literary. That wasn't how he got his 00 status in the books. But I think they took that because that was such a cold moment.
It was so cold.
From there. So I would agree with you. I think Connery, honestly, is absolutely on fire in this film.
From the first scene where he's playing, I can't remember the name of the game that they're always playing. But when he's playing that game,
Shemanda Farr.
That's it. All I can think is, when all you ever hear is, if someone said something like "Neuf de Bonk" to me, I'd be like, "Oh, that's a guy off screen in a Bond movie said that." But yeah, anyway, when he's introducing himself and he just says "Bond, James Bond," and he absolutely nails it. And I didn't realize that Sean Connery only says that a couple of times, doesn't he? Really, in all of his movies.
Yeah. But it's also definitive, isn't it? Now that's the thing, because
it is.
I think I watched it behind the scenes with like Pierce Brosnan and all that going, I've got to say it on Goldeneye. I don't know how to say it, and all you can hear is Sean Connery saying it. And you do think, do you know what? That would be so intimidating, because Connery issued it like a boss. And you notice, I don't know if I can't do anything like Connery, of course, but he sort of sits there looking
everyone tries
sideways, side eye to the camera, doesn't he? And he doesn't flinch. He doesn't blink. He doesn't sort of move his head. He just issues it, and then he puts the card forward. And I just think, why can't I be that smooth? You know,
right?
So I think that. And what was also quite interesting about Connery in this movie was the fact that he actually took the time to read the books as well. He wanted to understand the character, because he knew nothing about him. He met Ian Fleming as a relation.
Ian Fleming didn't like him, did he either?
No, he did, and that's why he read the books, because he wanted to show Fleming he was absolutely serious about it.
Absolutely.
You know, another link with Fleming, by the way, a deep link with Fleming is so we know at the very beginning of the movie where we see the issue where Bond's been sent into. We see the death of Strangways, don't we, and his secretary at the house in Jamaica. Now that's GoldenEye. That's the GoldenEye ranch.
It is GoldenEye, yeah, it is. Can I just say something really, really quickly about that one scene? Because I've got it written down. It's Mary, I think, the agent. The lady who has the bookcase that actually is like has a hidden like.
Like a radio in it.
That bookcase is fooling no one. I don't know if anyone else has seen it, but next time you go back and watch the film, literally it's like books are painted on, and you're like, no one is thinking that's a bookcase at all. But yeah, anyway, that's spy films in the 60s, I guess.
Considering that half the assassins that went in that room that killed her were blind, even they're going to find that bookcase.
Yeah, exactly. Let's be honest. If I got killed by a blind assassin, oh dear, I'd never live it down.
We've got a comment from Lorenzo again, by the way, guy. He's put Dr. No was a classic entry in the Bond movie. Everything about it established a formula in an important way for the way that Sean Connery knows the character very well. So, absolutely. I think you're echoing our thoughts there completely. It was so... It's not the movie you would think of an origin movie, but it did bring a lot of the formula together from there, you know. There was also some hidden references in that movie. I don't know if you picked up on these, Chris. Any ideas? I'll give you a little bit. Have a second to think.
Go on. Probably not. I'm quite a surface level person, so you might have to help me. Well, I mean, I know like people like Quarrel. I always forget that like Quarrel, the character, his son is in. Is it Live and Let Die? His son is in.
Quarrel Jr. Yeah, you're right.
Has a link to all the Bond films, but no, I don't. You go ahead, wow me with them.
So this is what I didn't notice it. I wrote it down while I was watching the film, so I was like, I wasn't actively looking for something. It just popped up, and I was like, maybe that means that. So what I established was we remember where we get onto the Crab Key Island, and they've survived the first attack where the boats are hunting for them and all that lot, and then they end up in like a forest area type where they're sitting down, and it's him and Honey having a heart-to-heart. They're talking about who they are, where they come from, what they do. And if you look at it, number one, it's quite dark and graphic because we established that Honey Ryder was sexually assaulted, and that's not something that ever gets brought up in a Bond movie. She was a victim early on in her life, and she brings that out, and I think she betrays it in a way where you just go, you know what, she's a strong, independent woman, and she's obviously been made more by that. She's not had anything taken away from her, you know. And I think a lot of people gloss over that line, but I was just like, shoot, wow, okay, I don't remember that the first time round. So that was one thing, and the other line was it was in the same scene, this bit as well. So she's sitting there, and you have to bear in mind, Chris, I do that thing where she sort of like, they brush their hair, you know, the girls doing all that, you know. And she goes, do you have a woman of your own? And you see Bond sort of stumble, sort of like going, you know, like that. And he never does that. Now, I'm wondering, is that a hark back to Vesper?
Do you know what it is? And it might be, but what I will say is, and you might know this, you might not. Sylvia Trench actually had a much larger role in the movie. She was meant to be Bond's girlfriend, and they actually planned for her to appear as his girlfriend in multiple movies. And I don't really know what the reason was. Maybe they just decided that her character didn't fit. Maybe they wanted him to be more of a womanizer. But perhaps that's like a leftover from like not knowing whether or not Sylvia was his, you know, girlfriend or not.
Yeah. Were you going to find? Was she going to be? Was she gel with the crowd? I suppose.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, I think that's
the actress Eunice Gayson. She actually chose Sylvia over Moneypenny. She had the choice of the two, and she chose Sylvia because she thought she'd be in more movies as his girlfriend.
That must be one of the biggest scandals in the Bond franchise, surely, to not know that. Alongside George Lazenby not signing up for 7 Bond movies, being told that Bond wouldn't last past the 70s. So,
well, Lazenby knows best.
So, what we also defined with Dr. No was the very, very first car chase. Now, do you remember how the car chase worked, Chris? So it was I forget the name, by the way. Forgive me, I'm putting it wrong. I think it was a Sunshine Beam. The car was. It was a little blue convertible.
Is this the one after the airport?
No. Oh God, no. You're right. That was the first car chase. I was actually referring to where the guys in the hearse are chasing him. And it's all green screen behind him.
Oh yeah, I love that scene.
And all that.
I love that scene.
I wasn't expecting that, actually, because you've thrown me. You're all right. The hearse, the bit at the beginning was actually the first car chase at the airport. No, you're right. I stand corrected. But it's ironic.
They're both good car chases.
They are, but they're filmed in different ways, right? So if you're good analysis there, right? So you're one at the airport, the first one, for example. Now there's no green screen for one. It's all live action, and it's close up to Connery in the real scene. It's in Jamaica, like going, take the next turn on the right, or head slap to the face, and all that. I can't do a Connery voice, by the way.
I forgot Bane was in the movie.
Mr. Wayne.
Mr. Bond.
But they, I think what was hilarious was that was done so basically. It was just down the road, a flash of the speedometer on the car, a flash of Connery's face, say turn to the right, drift off round the corner, jobs are good. Whereas the second car chase in the movie, which I'm still staggered by this too, by the way, is the Sunshine Beam. Correct me if I'm wrong. I've probably got the wrong name. of the car. But it's where he's on his way to go to see Miss Taro, the one that's got the dangerously Oriental-looking makeup at the house in the
She's
in the
not
hills.
the only one in the film. But...
Yeah. Look, we went around. Maybe it was a thing in that era. I don't know. We can't be too judgmental. But, it's the fact that was completely green screened, apart from the odd shot of a car going round the corner. I remember that bit where Connery's in the front of the car, and the hearse comes that close on the green screen to nudge him. It's like he's sitting on the bonnet. He's not actually being nudged at the back of the car. It's that close. He's just I think it unimmersed me slightly, if I'm being honest, because we know green screens are in the movie, but that one was a little bit too much for me, if I'm being honest.
That's totally understandable, but I think this is the thing about Dr. No, and we'll go on and on in praise about Dr. No, but it's worth saying this film isn't the finished article.
No,
I think there's half a Bond movie here. There's elements of this film that are slow, especially in the first half of the film. Once they get Dr. No's secret layer, and I'm sure we'll talk more about the character Dr. No in a minute. But it really kicks on, and that's where the film really sort of sets off and sings and becomes a very classic Bond movie. So it's not perfect at all, but it's a good start, a really good start.
It was finding its feet, wasn't it? That's what it was. Definitely. Really. From there, but it had a foundation to work with, but it didn't know how you translate a book to the screen in quite the same way. I hate to bring it up again, but like Casino Royale, they had a formula. They had a fantastic black sheep of a book to go with, and they had a lot of experience with the action movies after all these movies had come out. So they had a bit of a head start. But with Dr. No, nothing, absolutely nothing. And it's also worth noting, I think you've got a good point there, is about Dr. No himself. So Joseph Wiseman was our actor, wasn't he, for the Bond villain?
He was.
Before we go into the sort of the nitty gritty, villain-wise, Chris, what do you think of him? How did he pass off in the Hall of Fame for you?
So it's really easy to say that Dr. No is just a cookie cutter, evil genius with a secret layer, and that's all true. But he's one of the first. He is the the model for the crazy evil genius in a secret layer. You know, Dr. Evil, you know, and Blofeld, and you know, we know that Blofeld was an existing character before that, and Dr. No theoretically worked for Blofeld. But there's something about Dr. No that is archetypal of that evil genius, and Blofeld, even in the way Blofeld dresses, takes a lot from that. You know, Safin in No Time to Die wouldn't exist without Dr. No, in my opinion.
I give you that. I did actually notice looking at that. In the end,
exactly.
With him, it's also, I think you're right. I think it's the opposite way round. Dr. No, worked for Blofeld, but because of the way it's filmed, that dress style that Dr. No had passed on to what Stavro Blofeld would become famous for. And Rami Malek, No Time to Die, Safin was. Let's face it, a lot of people thought before the movie went out, they thought he was the Dr. No reincarnation. It was like
I thought he might be.
Yeah. And you know what? People would have very good grounds.
We'd had Lashif and
you know, and that's an interesting thing. But I mean, he wasn't the biggest physical threat, was he? That's the thing with Dr. No. He was more eerie and had power on his side rather than being a physical, I can, you know, rough you up on my own type thing.
I completely agree. Those bionic arms, the hands were the threat, like physically, but he was a mental threat, wasn't he? And he was an imposing presence. He was very cold and calculated and calm, and that was really unnerving. But as a villain, I thought everything that they did in that movie was excellent from a villain's point of view. The evil layer itself. You know, that kind of concept of you know, an evil layer is so archetypal now, but back then it was just so well designed. And I'm struggling to find the name. I can't remember the name of the guy that designed it. I did have it written down. But he did loads of the layers in.
Was it Ken Adams?
Yes, Adams. That was it. Yeah.
How much of a nerd am I coming across right now? I'm saying something like that.
Oh, I'm glad you picked it up because I was struggling to remember. So thank you. So Ken Adams, he was
instrumental,
great.
weren't he? Instrumental to a lot of the iconic sets and stuff like that. I think he was all the way up to the end of Dalton, wasn't he? Before Pierce Brosnan, obviously, I think it was alive for Pierce Brosnan's run, but I think he did every movie all the way up to the end of Timothy Dalton. So let's face it. Again, that should have been in our news the other week, actually, because that's another legacy in the industry that we have to put praise to, but gets a lot of no acknowledgement for. You know.
No, I agree. His style in the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, especially in Bond, is huge to how we see espionage thrillers and how that sort of bled into other movies.
Oh, yeah, I agree. For me, if I go back to sort of Dr. No as an individual, it's quite sinister because it's the bit where he gets captured. Well, they both get captured, and they're in the hotel room. They've been drugged with the coffee.
Yeah,
and Connery utters that legendary line, "Damn coffee," and throws the cup as he goes down. You know.
Yeah.
But Dr. No comes into the room while he's out cold. Just stands there like a boss, you know. Could evidently kill Bond given any second in any method he wanted, but his intrigue and his bottle, I think, just to be I don't have any to fear, I am the man to fear, was so eminent in that one scene that was less than like 15 seconds long, you know. And you don't see his face either, do you? Not to the right moment. It's either shadows, the camera cuts him off at his head, or whatever. So I think they kind of, maybe it's the wrong word, but they branched into sort of the horror type theme for that, didn't they? The monster, you know?
Definitely, they were kind of finding their tone, weren't they, with Bond? And I think I don't want to stray too much from your point, because I think your point's really excellent. But I think a lot of like the tone, you know, the praise should also go to Terence Young, the director, who, you know, if he hadn't have made choices to add humor to an otherwise straight script, might have made this film feel a little too brutal. He added rounded edges to the sharp corners, so to speak, that actually played into future Bond films. So and Terence Young sort of took Connery under his wing, didn't he? Terence Young took Connery around London for months, making him, getting him to feel more like an upper class person, and to study the mannerisms. So he was huge. But yes, for like tone and the way that they presented Dr. No, then the director has a huge amount of praise from me anyway.
It was a smidgen of horror, not too much. Don't get wrong. I'm not saying it's like, it's the monster under the bed or anything, but the essence of it felt quite intimidating. Like a serial killer type, like a slasher movie type thing. And
yes.
I was looking at this movie quite open-mindedly when I watched it today. And that's what I sort of picked up from that, was a really horror vibe. There was also the fact that they thought there was a dragon on the island.
Yes.
Which was obviously a tank. It was.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Native superstition or whatever you want to call it, but the reality was that was a bloody tank, and it was. It wasn't well camouflaged, really, was it? It looked like a tank. I mean.
Yeah, it did. It did look like a tank. But,
I just think. Let's face it. How many dragons have you ever seen in a movie or a TV series that has, like headlights at the front of it for one, tires at the bottom that bumps up and down the ground it drives on, and makes a diesel engine that sounds like a tractor trying to get out of a dirty field? Come on, But
yeah, and likewise, I think How to Train Your Tank would have been a rubbish film.
Oh, maybe we've got the next title. Maybe that's the next movie coming out. How to Train Your Tank. It could be.
Maybe it is. Actually, I think that's the next Bond movie, isn't it?
That's the next title. We've got it. Well done. Well done, by the way. That's brilliant.
Perfect.
But yeah, I'll draw you back to the point from there.
I'm freezing up, so apologies.
They were the bits. No, I can't see it, by the way. You look fine, mate. As always, as radiant as ever. But I think they were things that drifted away in the later movies. Anything horror-based and fictional-based dropped out. It wasn't really used as much. Maybe they thought that is a tank. That's too much. Maybe we went over the top, going, it's a dragon, so to speak. That's something I'm glad they did get rid of. But I'm willing to forgive it because, one, it can be passed off as a native superstition, believing in spiritual monsters and stuff like that. And on the other end of it, they don't know how to do a film yet. So in fairness, I'll let that roll as it was. But it was two ends of the dice there. There was a comical horror, and then there was a horror. Two things we never thought we'd see in a Bond film, ever.
No, but and they're definitely elements that get ironed out as the Bond films go on, don't they? I mean, I wouldn't say you see any of that already in Goldfinger. By the time Goldfinger happens, it's far more. There's a straightness to the Bond film. There's the action element, there's the humor element, there's the fear and the tension, but we don't go any further than that.
Yeah, I think what we can always agree is the first three Connery movies were an arc, weren't they? They weren't like interlinked. Yes. The little threads, but nothing major. But they were sort of the defining the era. I personally, if you have to ask me, put a DVD on between Dr. No and From Russia with Love, I'm choosing From Russia with Love any day of the week.
Of course.
And that to me, that was definitive more than what this movie was. And then it branched further and further into Goldfinger, and it was just legendary classic era, wasn't it? It really was.
Can I ask you a question? So I said at the top of the podcast that this was definitely one of the films that I watched the least, and probably I got a newer appreciation for the movie after watching it today. So you saying I would choose From Russia with Love over Dr. No any day of the week. I mean, I would agree with that, obviously. But what has changed now that you've watched it today? Has your appreciation changed, or do you still see it in the same way that you saw it before?
I think there's a slight evolve of view, and I think this is what we'll do as we come across all the movies and maybe in another 12 months or whatever, we look back at the previous review and understand that how we looked at it at that point. But in regards to say, today watching the movie and 3 years ago when I last watched the movie from then, I think it sort of first time round, or the previous time I watched it, it felt very much like 60s camp, maybe a little bit over the top. And I thought, this is a little bit hard to get to grips with, because From Russia with Love was not, it was totally different. Yeah. Whereas when I watched it this time round, that darkness actually really fed into me. I could feel it more because I was looking for it. You had the Dr. Dent thing. You had the guy that kills the driver after the car chase at the beginning of the car, which was brilliant. Well, no, he doesn't kill him, but he batters him, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
Because it was cyanide, wasn't it? He kills himself with.
He takes a cyanide pill, yeah. Was it on a... I can't remember now. Was it a cigarette or something?
Yeah, some cigarette. Oh, he does. Yeah, he goes... he's like, let me have a cigarette. Oh. And all that, yeah. So it's like that. But
he bites the cigarette, and I remember there being this really bizarre sound effect where he bites it, and it's like an explosion. He bites it, it's like, bang! And I was like, okay.
You had the...
cyanide pill exploded.
Go to hell with you. And I think that was sort of quite cleverly put together for me. But yeah, to take you back to your question, the darkness part was something that really struck me, and I love the darker eras, the Daniel Craig's, the Timothy Daltons, those sort of movies where they're just a little bit more edgy. So I think I was pleasantly surprised, Chris, if I'm being honest. I wasn't looking. I didn't know what to expect, how to take it. I thought it'd be 60s camp. No, I really, really enjoyed it, and I think this is the start of the watch throughs for me. As a bit of a catalogue of movies now as well, all of them. So obviously we'll be doing reviews on the channel, but I'd be inclined just to watch another one randomly on my own and look at it again differently. So for me, darkness and a bit more grit. How about you?
Fairly similar. I mean, when you think of old Bond, you kept saying the word camp, and I actually think that whereas there is some camp in Sean Connery's films, there's not much in this one, and I thought there was more. So I think I remembered more camp in this movie than there was, and actually I was waiting for that light-hearted moment, that that to break the tension, and it doesn't come that often in this film.
Was it pleasantly a surprise for you, do you think, on that basis?
Oh, definitely this film was a pleasant surprise. I mean, the film didn't surprise me in that, but it was probably like a shift in my like my preconceptions before going into the film. It was very much an open book for me this time, because I was trying to take it in, and I knew that we were going to do a review. So it was like a blank slate a little bit, and I think I appreciate it more because of that, and because of like things like the Daniel Craig films and Bourne and John Wick. Taking it back to the question this morning, where it's earlier in the podcast, where everything is more brutal, everything is more real, and I think this is the most real of Sean Connery's movies.
Yeah, well, if you look at the gadgetry, there's virtually nothing, really, is there?
No Q branch.
I think there's one. There is a Geiger counter, which it's real. It's real. We know we have Geiger counters in real life, So, and it wasn't particularly unique to the 60s either, was it? So, I'm just trying to think, was there anything else, or was it just that? There was nothing else.
No, it was just that.
Gadgets.
I mean, he gets a new gun, doesn't he? Because he's keen on the Beretta. But no gadgets. No, I mean, there's no Q branch. We've got Major Boothroyd, who's there just as the armourer, effectively.
Yeah. Let me ask you a fan theory, Chris. Right. So this is an idea I've got in my head canon about this movie, and I might be wrong, and you might go, yeah, bang on. But my theory is, so no one really knows where we put the Daniel Craig era. Do we put it pre-Connery, or do we put it right at the end of his timeline? Right, because of how it all fits. If we put all of the movies at the beginning before Dr. No, so what I mean by it is we have No Time to Die, and then we have Dr. No to follow it in a timeline. People go, Bond died in No Time to Die. But what you could argue from a headcanon point of view, this is just my perception, that I think he did survive in some shape or form, or not unscathed, of course, but kept himself off the radar because of his wife, his Love and his daughter, because if he ever comes into contact with again, they're dead, aren't they? Ultimately, and a nice little line in Doctor No that was brought in was when he gets his gun from Q or Major Boothroyd, if you want, and M specifies that you spent 6 months in hospital from consequence from your last assignment.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, is that the way we could put it from? Maybe at the end of No Time to Die, they thought he'd perished, but then surfaced in some way where they found a bleep on a monitor or something, and he was 6 months wounded and had to be completely rebuilt, I suppose you could say, technically. I don't know. Does that sing any bells with you, or?
Well, I could definitely see like the connections made. You know, if that's the way they went, then I'd go, oh, okay, I can see, you know, A to B to C. I think and this is a conversation for another day as well. I think a wider conversation. But like, just a quick question to you. I'll turn your question into another question. Like, if it turns out that Bond survived No Time to Die, does that cheapen what his sacrifice and what happened to him by doing that, or do we just draw a line under it and then Bond is alive in another story in another place and we just ignore? I don't know how they're going to do it. It's tough either way.
The best thing is low key. I think just keep it to the absolute minimal. Don't pay big attention to any plot threads. It was another assignment and supposedly it's happened. No, it didn't. But I think the reason I'm bringing this up is because that's my head canon, if you like. I've been agonizing.
I like it. It's a really good canon. Until it changes, I'm happy with that.
I'm thinking, like, since I was 16, I'm 34 now. I couldn't work out where to put Daniel Craig's era because I love how Casino Royale is a prequel. It's evidently a prequel, but I thought, how does it link in to Doctor No?
Yes, yeah.
And that was sort of, I was really pleasantly surprised to hear that line about the 6 months in hospital. And I thought, maybe that could be how it links in. I'm not saying the filmmaker has a thought of that, but certainly from a headcanon fan perspective, that's a theory we could throw out there. Put it in the chat. Tell me if you think I'm right or wrong. Do you like it? Don't you like it? You know, but I just think that's something where you can try and unwind the windy road of Bond's timeline, and that could be a way of linking it to the classic era.
So you've sparked something in me here, and this is going to be another conversation that we can come back to in another podcast, I guess. But
go for it.
So are you saying in your head that Bond's story starts in Doctor No and happens sequentially? So after Doctor No, From Russia with Love happens, and after From Russia with Love, Goldfinger happens, and after for Goldfinger, do you know what I mean? Or do you see? I can live with, and I don't know if this is how I see it, but these stories we're seeing aren't necessarily in that order, and maybe GoldenEye happened before You Only Live Twice, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that they're different eras.
Actors aside, but story.
You're seeing a short space in Bond's life, and they don't tell you when it happens, and some films do, but you know, maybe they happen out of order. I don't know. What's your view on that?
I think in maybe another cast we'll put together a fan chronological way of looking at the movies, and what we need to do is exclude the technology, exclude the actors, exclude the era, or anything like that. Where do we think the movies fall in? I mean, what's really interesting is they're nowhere near linked to not very linked to the novels at all.
No,
they're very, very. To say that they're very loosely to follow their novels would be an overstretch, because they're totally worlds apart. So I think, I don't think they necessarily happen in order. I mean, you could have Doctor No, Goldfinger, then From Russia with Love, possibly. Even though they were made in a different,
and then
possibly,
and then Skyfall. Who knows? We
could have Doctor No followed by Die Another Day, where they've got cars that can vanish instantly.
Here's one. What if Die Another Day happens before Doctor No, and the 6 months is his recovery from being tortured?
Oh no, I know this one. Go on, say it.
No. That's what I'm just asking the question.
I've heard that. I've actually heard that theory come round from somebody before, and
Okay.
I actually like it. I don't think it's out there. You're not stretching. I heard another really outlandish theory, and again we're going totally off topic here, but another outlandish theory was that 6 months where he was tortured in North Korea at the beginning of the dying of a day. He supposedly dreamed the Daniel Craig era in his head, and then, and then
Can he not dream on Her Majesty's Secret Service in his head instead?
So, sorry, I can't get my breath.
That's great.
It's an interesting take, I think, not to be dismissed in any way, but I do agree. I don't think there's definite chronological order, and you can split these around. But we will one day, Chris, unearth, because I don't believe in it, but I want to play devil's advocate. We will unearth on another podcast the codename theory, because I'm not one that's sold on it, but we do have to go through the possibility of it. From that,
I mean, Lorenzo has just commented as well that it's a fun theory and a very confusing timeline, and I completely agree.
100%.
Completely agree.
Where do you go with that? So I think it's very much something we're going to come up against, and it's very much something you guys are want to get involved with us as well and watch that theory, because you might not believe in it. You might think it's a load of trash, but you might just go, you know what? He's like Jason Bourne. One dies, another one comes in, and they take the same name on.
It's something to talk about, isn't it?
We'll look at. I'll dig for the evidence, and as will you, and we'll try and unearth. Is it a viable possibility?
Yes, I'm happy to look at it. At the moment, I don't think it is, but we'll see. We'll see whether my view changes when we dig into it.
Hey, if you guys, Lorenzo, Taz, anyone else watching has a take on that, drop it in the comments. Tell us.
Let us know.
What do you think your fan chronological order of Bond is? Where does it start? Where does it end? Maybe it's still going on. There's no death sequence. There's no nothing. It'd be interesting. But I think just to round Dr. No up as well, Chris, just the last thoughts. I really did enjoy the movie. In essence, I loved it. I would absolutely watch it again. And I think I would watch it again with a total new love to what I didn't have previously. But there are other movies that I would put way in front of it.
Oh, 100%. And I'm going to ask you a question, but before I do, just one last thing to talk about, and I will be really brief. Go on. The music. Monty Norman's theme. I mean, a lot of the calypso music was quite off-putting for me in a lot of the film, but the James Bond theme is there, and I know that John Barry creates more to it, but that Monty Norman jingle, if you will, is huge, isn't it?
Oh yeah, infamous. It's as famous as culture itself, and
it is.
I like it. It doesn't get overused, oddly enough, even though it's probably played about 3 or 4 times over the movie in different segments. It may be a little bit different lengths of the clip. But I quite liked, when he goes up to the Miss Taro's house, and she opens the door, and you just hear it vaguely going dun 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 dun, and I thought that was really slick. You know what I mean? Just I don't know. It just makes you feel like this is the theme, and you're going to hear more of it going forward. So that was for me. The music was amazing, and obviously we know it's the only Bond film that, in essence, didn't have a title sequence per se, where there was a theme to go with it. It was just the Bond theme, wasn't it?
Not a bad theme though.
Not a bad theme in any way. I think it's interesting that when you look at the title sequences, they didn't really take off until From Russia with Love. Not really, not properly, because it was just dots going across the screen, whereas From Russia with Love was the women. That's where it came in. They were on the screen, and that's where they stayed, let's be honest, over however long from there, really.
There was an element of silhouettes, though, wasn't there, in this one that I think carried over? It was done slightly differently. Like even the 3 blind assassins, it was kind of played as like a silhouette during the song, but it was kind of more trippy and I don't know. But what I'm trying to say, but there is that element of silhouettes dancing and the colour.
Yeah, that was
they obviously developed in future films.
I think it's also the other. There's one more tune. Don't forget, Chris. Three blind mice. Here we go. Hey, blind mice everywhere.
There's another tune we've not even talked about.
Oh God, I forgot about that. What's that one?
Underneath the mango tree, me honey and don't put my face on there. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing this solo. No. So yeah, there's like other songs, isn't there?
How did I forget that?
Yeah, I know, man.
How did I forget that one?
And we
That
actually get Sean Connery singing in the movie as well.
Oh man, you're right. He sings to Honey, doesn't he? He sings to Honey Rider.
He does. He sings to Honey.
Oh,
Underneath the
wow.
mango tree.
You see, 7 hours ago, it wasn't long enough, mate. I needed to watch it again. I might have to watch it before I hit some sleep tonight, maybe. I don't know.
You
possibly.
might have to.
Yeah.
Might have to. So the question I was going to ask you was, I wonder if it would be fun for us to rank, or not rank, sorry, but we will rank at some point, but to score the Bond movies as we review them. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah. Are we gonna do a 10 rating or 10? Something? What do you think?
Sounds good. I think out of 10, and I'm going to rate them against the other Bond movies. So I'm not, all Bond movies are 10s to me, but in the grand scheme of Bond movies, what do you think?
Oh, right. So I tell you what, we'll do it in the spirit of our banner illustration, shall we? So for me, right, we're assuming 10's the best and 1's the worst, right?
Sure.
Okay. So for me, Dr. No, all things considered, was probably 6.5.
Okay. I like that. I like 6.5.
I don't think it's a bad movie. It's an entertaining movie. It's a classic movie, but it's just not my go-to.
I mean,
what about yourself?
I'm happy to go with your 6.5. I'd got 6 in my head, so
yeah.
I'm happy to cede to a 6.5. I think that's fair.
I wanted to reserve 6 nice and kindly for Diamonds Are Forever because it's just horrendous. I'm not going to lie.
Do you think right now a movie will get lower than 6?
Some will. Yeah, some will. We won't name them. We won't name any more.
Not many. Not many.
But there are some that are going to go, how can I even give it a 10? It's too good.
How many 10s? Give me your prediction. How many 10s do you think they're going to be? And I'm reserving 10s for. Sorry, I'm just saying Lorenzo absolutely will definitely be ranking the Bond movies 100%, and we'll want your ranking as well.
All the way. I would say, so 25 official movies. I would say there's probably solid 10s. I would give it a good 8 or 9.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Solid 10s. So, and we will unearth them as time goes on.
Yeah.
From there for you, but
I think there's 5. I can't think of them in my head right now. I want to reserve the 10s for the tippy top, but I think maybe 5.
Look, it's all down to perceptions, and that's what's so good about us doing this podcast for you guys is we like the debate. We're not going to disagree. We're not going to agree. We're just going to go, wow, I never thought about that way, or looking at it that way before. So, tell us what's your favourite movie ultimately, and what rating do you give it?
What rating do you give Dr. No as well? We'd love to know what your rating of Dr. No is. And for when we get to From Russia with Love, let us know what your rating for From Russia with Love is before our next review. We'd love to be able to reveal some fans' scores before the podcast. That'd be really good, or during the podcast even.
Absolutely. I mean, our next podcast will be, we've already said it's around Valentine's Day, so it's about 2.5 weeks from now. That will definitely be Bond girl themed, so we want to hear about that. But I think only a couple of weeks following that, maybe end of February, start of March, that's when we'll sort of look at From Russia with Love, maybe as a podcast.
I'm definitely eager to get through these Bond films. Now that we've done this first one, I've loved doing this, and I'm really looking forward to us carrying on through the franchise.
It's really interesting because we don't know where the conversation will take us. And that's also a reason why you join us, because you don't know what level of rubbish this is going to be on what show that you're watching.
What score out of 10 do you give the podcast?
one thing we can offer you guys, it's consistent. So, think about it that way for you. But yeah, Dr. No, it's done. It's in the past in more ways than one. What we do want to do, though, any sort of plugs for you at the end of the show, Chris?
Well, yeah, so I think that we obviously want to plug the Bondcast. Thank you so much for everyone that has subscribed so far on YouTube and Facebook. I will leave you to discuss Facebook in a little bit more detail. I do want to plug my other channel, my YouTube channel, Geek Figure Fan. If anyone is interested in action figures and reviews of action figures, got lots of Indiana Jones figures up there at the moment. So if that interests you, why not jump over to Geek Figure Fan? The son of James Bond, some might say Indiana Jones. So yeah, come and join me on there. It'd be great to see you.
And yeah, for myself, there is obviously a couple things to plug on top of it. So what we're thinking of, or me thinking of, is obviously keep liking, keep subscribing, and keep following us across the platforms. We did try and do a Facebook stream today. Unfortunately, we've got to be a little bit longer as a channel to get to that point. So that will come. That will come in time. And obviously just keep subscribing and sharing us and sharing the love. That's what we really want to encourage more and more and be led by your feedback. One more thing as well, on the channel tomorrow, releasing about 5:00 p.m. GMT. Join the Ultimate Bondcast, because we'll be doing the second run through of the next part of Goldfinger on 007 Legends. So make sure you watch that, because that's got the legendary fight with Oddjob. I'll let that one out there for you.
I'm really looking forward to this. And a rumor has it that Mike's actually going to let me play with him at some point. So hopefully I'll be able to join on a game playthrough at some point. But I thought the first one was excellent. I'm really looking forward to seeing this next one as well.
We'll be joining together after Goldfinger. We've got another 4, maybe 5 movies in that game. So we'll do a bit of a game run through and a bit of a talk while we do it. How about that?
I love that. And I think if we get a chance to do another game in the future, it'd be really good to get some input from our fans on what game they'd like to see us play next.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a game that you don't hear a lot of.
Yeah. It could be something Bond associated and not necessarily James Bond itself. It could be like a Hitman game. It could be, I don't know, Just Cause. It could be a Call of Duty game. Or it could be something that you go, do you know what? I remember
Animal
the old
Crossing.
Sega. Animal Crossing. Yes.
I mean,
we definitely want to see that on the channel. But yeah, like the comments, tell us what you want to do. And we will do our best to engage with you and give you that feedback as and when it comes. So yeah, Goldfinger up tomorrow.
Awesome.
Apart from that, guys, we've really enjoyed it. Thank you very, very much for joining us on the podcast. More love to come, more updates to come. And yeah, we'll see you soon. See you later. Bye. Bye.